Rain lashed against the glass windows of a towering New York skyscraper as Daniel Blake, a wealthy and influential CEO, stood half-dressed, sipping whiskey in silence. The city sparkled below him, but the atmosphere in the room was heavy. Behind him, Amara Lewis, a smart and driven black secretary in her late 20s, gathered her clothes with trembling hands. The night they had just shared was not a romantic encounter, it was complicated, filled with blurred lines and unspoken expectations. Amara had long admired Daniel's intellect and ambition, and for one fleeting moment, she believed there might be more between them. But reality hit harder than she expected. Her voice was soft, broken with disbelief as she asked, "I thought I meant something." Her eyes searched his for any trace of emotion. Daniel didn't turn around. His response was cold, calculated, and final. "It was a mistake. You're fired." Amara's world shattered in a second. The job she had worked so hard to earn, gone. The respect she held for him, vanished. Her dignity, however, remained untouched. She didn't beg, didn't plead. She gathered what was left of her pride and walked out of that office, each step away from him a silent vow that she would rise on her own. Outside, the rain continued to fall, almost as if the sky mourned with her. Amara didn't know how, but she knew one thing with certainty: this would not be the end of her story. It would be the beginning. A few weeks had passed since that devastating night, and Amara now sat on the edge of a worn-out mattress in a cramped, dimly lit apartment. In one hand, she held a crumpled eviction notice. In the other, she gently rested on her growing belly. The silence around her was loud with fear, fear of what lay ahead, of how she would survive without a job, without support, carrying a child she hadn't planned for. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Life had slammed its door in her face, but Amara refused to be a victim. Instead, she wiped her face, tied her hair back, and began to fight for her future. The days that followed were brutal. She waited tables at a dingy diner during the day, her feet aching from long hours. At night, she buried herself in books, teaching herself business fundamentals through free online courses. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl in a public hospital, alone but fiercely determined. Months passed, and Amara juggled motherhood, work, and studies with the kind of strength only found in those who've been broken and refuse to stay that way. Each sleepless night fueled her resolve. In a powerful montage, she rose from exhaustion to excellence, launching a blog, then a service, then her first app. Her voiceover echoed through the journey. She was knocked down, but never knocked out. Her rise had begun, not just for herself, but for the life she carried. 5 years later, the skyline of New York remained the same, but Daniel Blake's world had drastically changed. Once celebrated as a visionary tech mogul, he now sat alone in a nearly empty boardroom. The walls, once lined with awards and investor photos, were bare. His company had been rocked by lawsuits, PR disasters, and the collapse of his latest AI project. The people who once praised him now refused to return his calls. Daniel looked over balance sheets and termination letters. The silence was deafening. His once thriving empire was crumbling, and he had no one left to blame but himself. In a desperate attempt to re-enter the game, Daniel attended a global tech summit. He sat among hundreds of others, barely recognized, until the keynote speaker took the stage. The crowd erupted with applause as a young, confident black woman stepped up. Dressed in a tailored white suit, she introduced herself, "I'm Amara Lewis, founder and CEO of RiseTech." Daniel's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. The woman he fired, discarded like nothing, was now a powerhouse. Respected, adored, and praised for revolutionizing AI in healthcare, especially for underserved communities. As she spoke, Daniel didn't just hear her words, he felt them. She hadn't just rebuilt her life, she had built something greater than he ever had. And for the first time, Daniel Blake, once untouchable, felt truly small. And silently, with a shaky breath, he whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Daniel Blake stood outside the towering glass building that now housed RiseTech, Amara Lewis's billion-dollar company. The logo on the front spun slowly in the wind, clean and bold, everything he used to be. Dressed in a wrinkled suit and carrying nothing but a hope for redemption, he stepped inside. The receptionist, a young intern, didn't recognize him. That was new. Humbled, he waited quietly in the lobby until he was finally ushered into the sleek, modern executive office. And there she was. Amara stood as he entered, graceful, powerful, and radiant in her presence. The very image of success. She wore confidence like armor, but there was no bitterness in her eyes. Just calm strength. Daniel swallowed hard. I came to ask if you'd consider working with me," he said, voice trembling. "Or maybe, helping me rebuild what I've lost." Amara studied him for a long moment. Then she gestured to the photo on her desk, her daughter, smiling in a school uniform. "I didn't rebuild. I created. For her. For women like me who were dismissed and discarded." He nodded, guilt etched into every line on his face. "I was wrong, Amara. About everything." Her voice was firm, but warm. "I don't forget what you did. But I believe people can change. I won't work with you. But I will help you." Daniel blinked in disbelief. Amara offered a simple truth: forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It sets you free. 1 year later, a large crowd gathered in front of a brand new glass building in the heart of Brooklyn. Balloons waved in the wind, children laughed in the background, and a banner read, "The Rise Center, free tech and business training for single mothers." Amara Lewis stood at the podium, her daughter by her side, smiling proudly. Cameras flashed as she began her speech. "I once lost everything in a single moment. But I learned that pain can be power, if we use it to lift others." In the front row sat Daniel Blake, no longer in the spotlight, but different. Humbled. Changed. Not a CEO, but a supporter. He had donated a portion of his remaining fortune to help Amara bring this vision to life. When Amara called him to the stage, the crowd murmured in surprise. "This man once ended my career," she said, gently. "But today, he helped start hundreds more. Not because I forgot the past, but because I chose to write a better future." Daniel stood beside her, choked up, tears in his eyes. "You gave me something I never gave you, Grace." They cut the ribbon together. Behind them, dozens of women walked into their first coding class, their faces filled with hope. As the scene fades, Amara's voice returns. "When we rise above bitterness, we don't just heal ourselves, we help the world rise with us." The crowd applauds. A new legacy begins, not of wealth, but of compassion.